Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing my November plan with me, and my theme for November was rosemåling, which is a Norwegian folk art style. I definitely went super in depth with this theme, so I kind of tried to have some pictures and inspiration up on the screen along with what I'm painting, so you can kind of follow along with where the inspiration is coming from. But overall, I had a great time making this theme, and I hope you enjoy this video. So rosemåling is the decorative folk painting art native to Norway, and it came into existence at around 1750. It was based on the Baroque and Rococo art styles, which came from farther south in Europe, and then they made their way up to Norway. They kind of blended with Norwegian wood carving traditions. So a lot of rosemåling will look like renderings of wood carving. And one of the motifs that they tended to feature was the acanthus plant. So wood carving plus Rococo is an easy kind of shorthand to remember what rosemåling is going to look like. There's a whole bunch of different regional styles of rosemåling, native to different valleys and different sections of Norway. So for my theme here, I did a different style of rosemåling for each spread. So this first page that you see me working on here is for the cover page, and this is the telemark style of rosemåling. The telemark style is kind of known for a big elaborate C shape, which kind of forms a stem of a big plant, and then you'll have another C that will sprout from it to form the root, and then you'll have flowers and vines kind of sprouting off. It's very elaborate. Sometimes there'll be flowers along with it. It's very complicated and full and thick. And the design that I'm doing here is actually a fairly well-known piece. And so I'm doing my best to copy it. It is by Ethel Kvalheim. So she was one of the well-known rosemåling painters in the United States, and she has actually passed away, but her work is super beautiful. I have two of her pieces on screen as kind of inspiration for the telemark style. So the telemark style is fairly asymmetrical. It's fairly defined by the C and the S scroll shape. So those are swoops that kind of look like C's and S's. And then there's kind of like a fantasy movement to it. It's very whimsical, it's very exuberant, very flowing, and I do think this is probably one of my favorite styles that I learned for this video. All of the styles are similar to each other in some aspects, given that they are all subsets of a greater kind of common style of rosemåling. But I do think this is one of the more more lyrical looking styles of rosemåling. Some of the issues that I dealt with throughout this video were the color palette. So I'm using a cream colored paper here to do this painting for the cover page, and I'm going to paste it onto my journal. However, my journal is white, very bright white paper, and rosemåling is kind of traditionally done on either a wooden base, so kind of wood color, brown, tan, etc., or darker colored bases, so like a painted wood, and you'll have like a gray, a blue, brown, black. Typically it's darker, or it's using yellows or more natural colors. It's very rare that you'll see rosemåling on a pure white base. So that was definitely an issue that I dealt with throughout this video. I tried to adjust color palettes to keep true to the spirit of the style that I'm trying to emulate. However, some of them succeeded more than others. I also had issues with mixing the right colors. I'm fairly new to painting, and I think I just need to take a color mixing class or something. So if you have any good links on color mixing in painting, I would love to learn more, because I definitely struggled with trying to get the right mix of colors, particularly for the Oz page. But yeah, that was definitely a struggle. And then just brush control in general. I'm pretty new to painting, and I definitely wish my brush control was better and I had more fine pointed painting here. But overall, I'm fairly pleased with how the page comes out and how the whole theme kind of comes together. So for this cover page of November, I love the page on the right, the copy of the Ethel Valheim picture. However, I just was not happy with the left page, which was less based on an actual piece of existing rosemalling and was more just me kind of riffing with the colors. And I don't think I'm skilled enough yet, or at least I wasn't when I was making this, to be able to riff effectively in the telemark style, because I don't think it looks telemark. And I do end up cutting this page out. I had left a page of blank behind it, so it was actually really lucky for that. And I don't typically cut pages out of my journal, usually because the page behind it belongs to the previous month, but I had left a space empty. I was actually going to do like a gift planning spread, so I just moved that to the end of November, and I cut out a page. And you know, if that works for you, and sometimes that just has to happen, and I think that there's no harm in cutting pages out of your journal, as long as you're transparent about it and you're not trying to say like, oh, this all came out perfect on the first try. So yeah, I cut a page out of my journal, and I think it looks better with the page cut out. Everybody say hi to Daphne. I got another black cat, so there are now 2 black cats roaming around my videos. For my quote for November, I did a quote from Anne of the Island by Lucy Maud Montgomery. The quote says, "It was November, the month of crimson sunsets, parting birds, deep sad hymns of the sea, passionate wind songs in the pines. Anne roamed through the pineland alleys in the park, and, as she said, let that great sweeping wind blow the fogs out of her soul." This next spread is for my goals and then my 2 main trackers of the month. So I really only had 2 goals for November. I'm working on NaNoWriMo, and I'm working on this workout program. So I wanted to have a page that was just exclusively for those 2 goals, because those are my main priorities. And then my goals page, of course. And the style that I'm using for this page is called Halling or Hallingdal. Also, my apologies to any Norwegians. I love the Norwegian language, but I'm not very good at pronunciation. So feel free to correct my pronunciation if I'm mispronouncing anything. So the Halling style is typically featuring a central flower, and everything branches sort of symmetrically off from the central flower. So that you can see pretty strongly on the goals page. I tried to have matching central flowers on the top and the bottom, and then everything branches off from that. And you'll see like a grid, you'll see like a black or a white surrounding frame or line work around the edges of the color. So this is another area where you would typically not do it on whites. Typically you'd be using a much darker base, but I tried to adapt it for white. And then for the opposing page, I have more of a telemark style, to be honest, because I was still trying to find my footing with the Halling style. I wasn't really sure how to do that in the center, so I ended up kind of going back to the scrolls that I had become comfortable with from working on the cover page. So yeah, I think the hauling style is really beautiful. This style was typically used to decorate ceilings and walls, and you'll see a lot of leaves, teardrops, scrolls and flowers, but typically it's very symmetrical and surrounding a central flower. This next spread is for my expense tracker and then my diary / highlight of the day spread. So for this spread, I went with the Gudbrandsdal style. So this is a much more muted style. It typically is mostly foliage, so you won't see as many flowers. You'll see way more detail given to the foliage and to the scrolls, and a lot of depth of color and changing dimensions of the color within the scrolls. And the scrolls are meant to represent like vines and plants usually. So you'll see a lot of shading, like I was saying, and it does tend to be a little bit more asymmetrical. You can have flowers. There are tulips or 6 or 8 petal roses. However, I chose to stick to the kind of foliage style, and then I have not actually seen any in this color palette that I picked. Typically the color palette would be more like a muted green or blues or shades of blue and white and green. However, I just really like the fiery colors for November, so I just decided I was going to try and do it with the warmer fiery colors. This next spread is for my mood tracker and my habit tracker. So this spread is done in the Rogaland and Riffelke style of rosemåling. So Rogaland is actually a little bit more popular in the US, I think, than it was in Norway. Typically when I look up various instances of the Rogaland style, I usually find instances done by American painters, which is interesting and kind of illustrates that traditional folk arts from one place can often follow immigrants from that culture into a new place, and they kind of take on a different life in the new place. So I think the American tradition of rosemåling is different to the Norwegian tradition, and they probably look different at this point to each other, but that's kind of cool too, and I don't think there's any reason that we have to pretend that they need to be the same. So for my mood tracker, I am copying this beautiful tray, and I'm trying to copy the design of it. My proportion got a little bit off, and for each element, I'm giving each element kind of a number of the day of the month. So it's not going to look at all symmetrical, even though that is more the Rogaland style. But I thought it was just too pretty of an option to pass up. So it definitely won't look totally symmetrical at the end of the month, but that's okay. And then for the Rogaland and Riffelkiss style, it's sort of 2 in 1. Typically flowers are a dominant element, and there's less foliage, there's less of the scrolls, usually just more flowers, more symmetry. In America in particular, it tends to be super symmetrical, and it's done on plates in particular. However, even in Norway, it is pretty symmetrical. Usually it's very mirrored, and it's typically done on a very dark background. So this is the first of my weeklies, and at this point, I typically skip the first weekly of the month because I end up making my spreads on like the 9th or the 10th, and by then I'm not going to just make a weekly just for show. So I almost always end up skipping that first weekly, and then this second week is my first weekly, and I'm doing the Oz theme, Oz style of rosemåling. So this is typically very floral in an abstract way. You'll see a lot of the leaves with very strong veining, and the colors are less gradiated together. You'll see way more separation and distinction between colors, and less blending. And it's typically a lot lighter and a lot brighter than most styles of rosemåling. This is one of the few that you will see on super light backgrounds. So you see a lot of oranges, you see a lot of bright pale greens and pale blues. And this was also a very frustrating style for me to do because I realized as I'm doing it that my paints do not want to create light and bright colors. And I think that's due to my own poor color theory and paint mixing skills, because every time I tried to get to a good light green, for example, for the leaves, it just turned into mud for some reason. It turned into like the most muddy thing you can imagine. So this was very frustrating for me to create this spread. However, it doesn't look too bad, and I think the purple lettering that I come in with at the end definitely helps. However, yeah, this was not my favorite of the spreads that I've created, even though I think it is probably, after Telemark, one of my favorite styles of rosemåling. I think it's so pretty with all the vivid, bright colors on the light background. I think it's super striking and super beautiful. This next weekly is done in the Valdres style. So this is, along with the Telemark and Halling styles, one of the most common styles of rosemåling. This is typically super realistic looking flowers, done in these big thick bouquets, and you typically don't see the stem as much as you do with rosemåling usually. It's more just like the big flower head, and it's typically done on a dark background. I forgot to mention earlier in the video, but often with rosemåling, these will be the elements at the edge of a piece, these kind of big scrolly things or the big bordery looking things, and then you'll have like a landscape or a figure painting in the middle. Obviously, I'm not doing landscapes or figure paintings because the whole point is that it's kind of a frame for my journal. However, Valdres is one of the styles that frequently borders like a figure or a building or a landscape scene, and is sort of like a classic element within the Valdres style. For this third weekly, I'm doing the rosemaling style, which I believe to be a subset of telemark. I didn't realize how specific it was when I was gathering my inspo images, but the way this style is done is with red on black, and at this point in the video I was really feeling the lack of authenticity of doing everything on white, so I just pasted in some black paper so I could get a more authentic feel. That's the reason I added the little black border around the Valdres flowers in the last spread, because I wanted to try and give it a little bit more of the authentic color palette. And I think the red on black looks so stunning. It's such a beautiful, just visually arresting feature. For this last weekly, I'm doing a full painting on the one page, and this is another attempt to copy a masterwork of a Vest-Agder style rosemåling piece. So with Vest-Agder, this is one of two kind of in like twin styles. So you've got Ost-Agder, which means east, and then Vest-Agder, which means west. And typically they're both very intricate, and they have a lot of detail done in the line work, which is either black or white at the end. Typically there's some kind of cartouche or crown. There's a lot of the base of the C, again, as you see in the telemark style, the base of the C scroll. However, you've also got elements from like the Holling style with the big flower and the grid, and yeah, I think it's just such a pretty and intricate style. It's super decorative and super unique. So my last spread for this theme is a gift-giving spread, which I mentioned earlier. This is the first time I'm trying this out, but I saw this on Reddit and it looked super helpful. I have a slot for an item, a slot for checking off if I've bought it, if I've received it, if I've wrapped it, and then I have an optional slot for if I've mailed it. And then the color scheme and the design is based on the Numedal style of rosemalling, which I actually couldn't find a ton of information about when I was researching, but based on the visuals, it looks to me like a mixture of the Halling style with the black line work, plus the telemark style, so fairly intricate scrolling and C-scrolls and lots of the swooping movement, and it's typically done on a red background. I'm not super pleased with the color scheme here. I tried to do a red and green thing for Christmas, but everything was coming out super dark and muddy, like I was mentioning earlier, and I just didn't really know how to fix that. But I'll have to take a class or something, and at this point I was just so keen to be done with it. I had been painting for like a week straight at this point, and I was just ready to be done. It was a lot of research and a lot of learning, but I am very proud of myself because this is kind of the first time I've tried to do something like this, and I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning all these different styles and all this different information about rosemalling, and I'm actually thinking about doing something similar with other folk art or cultural art traditions. I think it could be super cool. If not in my main bullet journal, maybe doing like a series in like a travel or geography journal. Let me know if you'd be interested in seeing something like that, just because I think it's so cool to learn about these different styles of historical and cultural art, and like even the differentiation between the same style of art. Like this is all rosemalling, but it's just different sub-styles within rosemalling, and I think that's so neat. So this is my final flip through. Let me know what you guys thought of this video and what your favorite style was, what your favorite spread was. For me, I think my favorite is probably either the cover page or the Halling page, which is right after the cover page. I think the colors on those look so nice. And part of that is I was copying a masterwork for the cover page, so of course the colors look nice because a professional chose them. But yeah, like I said, I had a great time doing this theme, even though it took me forever. And let me know if you'd like to see more of this kind of video. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel, and I will see you next time.